Something happened that changed these men so radically that they were willing to die for what they believed, leave everything behind. And it was something about it was so powerful that it changed a nation, changed its surrounding nations, changed the continent, and eventually traveled across the entire world, so we're still talking about it today. Something happened. And it didn't start as a manipulation tactic. It didn't start as a power grab. It started at an event.
Historically, religion was used to control/manipulate people, so there's no reason Christianity would be designed any differently.
For sure. 100%. Religion has been used as a way to manipulate and take power and control and to take money. Yeah, for sure. That's absolutely true. I'm not fighting that. I'm not even going to fight that that's happened in Christian circles, that there are manipulative pastors, that there have been manipulative popes, that there has been manipulation in the Catholic Church. The question to ask is not has this been misused, but what was the intention of this originally? How was this used originally? And here's why I think that's important. People suck. We just do, right? People are terrible and we're going to mess it up. It doesn't matter what you give us, we're going to mess it up. There's no form of power that won't in some way find corruption. There's no, people just suck because we inherently have corruption in us. We inherently are flawed. And so to say, well, this wasn't used well, doesn't necessarily mean that it was, that it was never good never good to begin with, right? My wife is a fantastic cook. If she gives me a really, really good recipe, I will probably make garbage. Not because it's not a good recipe, but because I'm not a good cook, right? Very similarly, if you give broken people the recipe for a perfect life, it's unlikely we're going to do it right. Not because it's not the right recipe, but because we're not. We wouldn't be able to live it out even if we got the recipe. We don't start the conversation about the validity of Christianity at its results, at its rules, at our opinions, at how comfortable it makes us. We start at the evidence of Jesus Christ and his resurrection. That's where we start, always. On this topic specifically, how Christianity was used, was it just a way someone could get power or be manipulative or whatever else? If we're gonna just answer that, we can just look at the early church and see that was never the intention. And we know this because there was no power to gain. There was no money to be had. There was no manipulation that could be done. There was nothing there, right? Even if there was, the Bible is actually pretty clear that the early disciples couldn't have manipulated if they wanted to. Literally kind of calls them dumb. There's actually a point that Peter, one of the first guys that preaches, is preaching the gospel. He's telling someone about what Jesus did. And they said they could tell that he was from God because he was so unlearned. Meaning he was saying things that were so profound, but he was clearly an idiot. So these aren't like masterminds. These aren't like charismatic people that gained a huge following, right? That's not who we're looking at. We're looking at fishermen. We're looking at regular blue collar, random guys. And we're looking at a guy who was a carpenter that made a claim that he was the Son of God. And then he was later beaten and tortured for his claims and killed. Which, by the way, during the entire time that he's preaching and he's going around and he's telling people and he's speaking these profound things and telling people who he is, at no point is he getting rich. He's a traveling preacher. He's homeless through this whole thing. He's not getting money. He's not getting power. There's no government power. In fact, his disciples wanted him to overthrow Rome. He could have exerted political power and intentionally didn't. Said, no, guys, that's not what I'm here for. I'm not here for political power. When Jesus was given the option to take political power, he said, no, that's not why I'm here. Because everyone wanted that. People got mad at him for not taking political power. A lot of scholars think that's why Jesus was betrayed by Judas, was he wasn't taking political power. And Judas was like, come on, Jesus, let's get on it. So when Jesus could have taken political power, he intentionally didn't. Jesus had no money, right? He was like a traveling homeless preacher. So there's no power, there's no money to be had. There's nothing to gain. And then he ends up dying. And then you see the early church. And then you think, well, were they lying? Did he actually not come back from the dead? There's this brilliant video that I saw because all scholars believe Jesus lived, and all scholars believe that Jesus died on a cross. There's too much historical evidence to say that he didn't. Where people start to disagree, and where Christians believe, and where people that aren't Christians say, no, we think this must have been a hoax, is did he actually come back from the dead? That's the real crux. That's the real important conversation. And so I saw this video where they're saying people that don't believe that Jesus actually came back from the dead, here's what they think the apostles must have been like. And it's like a video of like these 12 disciples all gathered in a circle. And they're like, all right, I've got this great idea. We're going to pretend that Jesus came back from the dead. And we're going to tell everyone that. And then we're all going to get brutally murdered. And then they all cheer. And one guy's like, hold on, but are we going to get like rich and famous before that? And he's like, oh, no, people are going to kick us out. Probably your families are going to disown you. You're going to be poor. And then we'll get, disowned and we're all going to get killed. And then they all cheer again. And it's like that doesn't make any sense. And that's because that's the lives that they lived. These 12 disciples, they all ended up, all 12 of the apostles ended up being murdered for their faith, often tortured beforehand, except for one who was stranded on a desert island. Like they were disowned by their families. They lost their jobs. They lost their livelihoods. In the early church, it actually said that the rich and poor came together and they had to provide for each other's needs because so many people had no means of income anymore. Like they were disowned because their families called them heretics. There was no power to be gained. There was no money to be had. The reason they went around telling the world is because they saw something that changed everything. The best example we have from this is the Apostle Paul. And the Apostle Paul writes 2/3 of the New Testament. He's one of the most important figures we have in the Bible. And he goes from a religious leader, right, from an organization, the Pharisees, that they did use religion as a way to gain money and power and status. And he had the highest status. He was trained by like the smartest Pharisee, right? So he had the high status. He had a ton of money. Pharisees were very wealthy, very well off. So lots of status, lots of money, lots of power. Everyone would have wanted to listen to what he had to say. So much so that when he said, we need to start killing these Christians, they said, yeah, go for it. Dude could do whatever he wanted, and everyone would call him a saint. So he goes and he does this, and then one day, in the book of Acts, it says that he has an encounter with Jesus. And after this encounter with Jesus, everything changes. And by the way, there's evidence of this out like in the Bible and out of the Bible. This is historically documented. Suddenly, this guy that hated Christians and had everything going for him decides, I'm going to throw it all away. Give up all my money. Give up my job, give up all my status, give up everything. He leaves, he starts making tents on the side so he can earn an income and not starve. He doesn't have a family anymore, he's not married, he doesn't have kids, he's alone. And he just goes around telling people about this encounter with Jesus, telling people about what Jesus did, planting churches, starting this new religion. And he ends up being murdered. He's martyred for his belief system in Rome. No money, no power, no no status. There's no possible manipulation. So this is one of the best examples of why Christianity is so likely true. One of the best reasons we have is every religion could be used for manipulation and control and for gaining money and gaining power and gaining status. But Christianity at its roots had none of that. It was completely honest. Something happened. Something happened that changed these men so radically that they were willing to die for what they believed, leave everything behind. And it was something about it was so powerful that it changed a nation, changed its surrounding nations, changed the continent, and eventually traveled across the entire world, so we're still talking about it today. Something happened. And it didn't start as a manipulation tactic. It didn't start as a power grab. It started at an event where Jesus Christ rises from the dead.